Now, as I was thinking about this during the week, I sort of imagined a conversation, if you will, between God and his angel Gabriel up in heaven, in which Gabriel is quizzing God on why God has done certain things. It went something like this. God, what's gotten into you lately? You seem to be on edge. I don't know why, but when I think of Gabriel, I always sort of think of him with this accent of an Italian Jew from Brooklyn. It's just one of those quirks about me. So, God. Well, Gabriel, I thought I had licked my anger problem, but these human beings I created, they keep pushing my buttons, if you know what I mean. Oh, I know what you mean, big guy. But I thought you was doing pretty good until recently. I mean, early on, you got mad and you killed not only the humans, except for Noah's family, of course, but you killed all the beautiful animals and everything that exists. I mean, that was kind of out of control. Well, I know, Gabe, I let my temper get to me that time. I was mad. I wasn't thinking straight. But I got better, remember? I mean, when they started building that terrible tower to Babel, I spared the animals that time. And I just took out my rage and resentment on the people of the world. Yeah, that was an improvement. I mean, considering where you started, but that's not saying much, Chief. Well, I realize that that's true, but, I do continue to improve. Because when I was mad at all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, instead of taking it out on all humans everywhere, I only rained down fire and brimstone on the men, women, and children of those two cities. Yeah, big guy, that was an improvement too. But I still think you can do better. Well, like what? Well, this whole vengeance is mine stuff from Deuteronomy, I don't think that was necessary, big guy. I think you could have spun that a little bit different. You're probably right, Gabe. I'm just trying to show I care. But God, when you respond to injustice with anger, you almost always end up creating more injustice. You mean like killing all the living things, including children and animals in the flood? And I guess not everyone in Sodom and Gomorrah deserved to die. Yeah, now I'm feeling like you're getting it, boss. Gabe, you know that I want to deal with my anger problem. Do you have any suggestions of what I can do? You're going to think I'm crazy. Try me. Well, the only way you'll ever truly get it, God, and get it good, is if you were to go down there and walk around in their sandals for a while and see what it's like to be human. You mean actually incarnate myself in the flesh as an actual human being? That's what I'm saying, Chief. You go spend a few decades in the desert and you'll come back a changed God. Now, in my imagination, Gabriel eventually convinces God to go down to earth and see what it's like to be human, in the form of Jesus, of course. And if we look at the Gospels, we can see that Jesus still has a few slips. Like when he goes ballistic at the money changers in the temple in Jerusalem, there's a little bit of righteous indignation in there. He wasn't really holding back too well at that point. But we can understand somehow the turning over of the money changers' tables because it's a heroic act of civil disobedience against an injustice and corruption. But the one that stands out the most is when he curses the fig tree. It reads, "As they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. Now when he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, 'May no one ever eat fruit from you again.' And his disciples heard him say it. And in the morning, as they went along and they saw that the fig tree had withered from its roots, Peter remembered and said to Jesus, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed, it's withered." Now, here we have Jesus come on to a fig tree that's not in season, and he curses it for not bearing fruit. Now, this is a little harder to understand. I mean, even God's anger and retribution in the Hebrew Bible is always instigated by some ethical transgression or breach of covenant. But in the case of the fig tree, it's just doing what it's meant to do. Now, there's a time and a season for every purpose under heaven, and this was not the season for figs. This makes Jesus' reaction and his curse much more perplexing. A hungry Jesus seems to act like a frustrated child or some bully who uses his power to harm the tree for no other reason than he does not get what he wants. Now, of course, during the course of his lifetime on earth, Jesus catches on, and he leaves us a lot of positive examples to follow. He tells us to turn the other cheek. He teaches forgiveness for mistakes. Even while dying, tortured and scorned on the cross for no good reason, Jesus says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Now, God is indeed a changed God after this brief sojourn on earth. In other words, God dealt with God's anger problem. How about you? Now, you may have grown up in a house where there was a lot of anger, or even violence of some kind. Your parents might have fought a lot. And we know that behavior runs in cycles in families. We all say that when we grow up, we're not going to be like our parents were. But we also find out that when we get older, that most of us are a lot like our parents. We have to get over the idea that because we come to church or because we're successful out in the working world, that somehow we're without problems like anger. We all need some angels at times who can come and help us to overcome our anger problems or our addiction problems or our lying problems or our spending problems or some other secret behaviors we have. We need people we can trust to hold us accountable, who can help us to throw off these kinds of problems from our lives once and for all, so that we don't pass them on and their consequences to our children and grandchildren. We can choose to set a new standard for our families and for our lives. Now, if you were raised in an angry or violent home, unless you work on it, you're likely to do some of the same things. Not because you want to, but because that's the way that anger and life works. Now, whether you grew up around it or not, we all get angry sometimes. And it's not really anger that's the problem or the sin, but it's what we do with it. It's how we act out our anger that creates problems. Anger itself is not really a vice, it's an emotion. It's a necessary emotion. In many ways, it's a red flag that tells us that something is needing to be addressed in our life. Our anger is usually telling us that something we care about has been violated. But the problem is that we so often misplace our anger or mistake the source of our anger, and we put it onto all kinds of other people and situations. When Jesus curses the fig tree, he's really angry about the fact that in this life, we do not always get what we want. And that's frustrating. And when we're tired and we're hungry, it gets worse. But it's one of the most important lessons in the Bible, that things do not always turn out the way we want them to.